Francis Galton was Darwin's half-cousin, and Galton, with a very different temperament to Darwin, had travelled all over Africa and other parts of the world, and his views on racial superiority really solidified on those travels. And following the publication of The Origin of Species, Galton's view was that if humans are mutable, if we are evolved beings, and if through domestication and farming and agriculture we can mould, we can change species to our own ends, then why can't we do the same for humans? And this is an idea that he doesn't come up with. This is an idea that is as old as culture and society itself. But in the years following Thomas Malthus's ideas about population growth, Galton applies statistical techniques within this new framework of evolution that Darwin has set up. And with that begins, starting in a roughly late 1860s, begins what becomes a lifelong commitment to this idea of the scientification of population control, which he gave the name eugenics to. What's very interesting in the pathway that I'm interested in tracking is that we most readily associate the crimes of the atrocity of eugenics with the Holocaust and the Nazi era. But the influence of the Americans on Nazi eugenics programs cannot be understated. It was a legal framework was provided by Charles Davenport and his juniors. A financial endowment from the Rockefeller Foundation actually paid for the eugenics labs in Berlin in the 1930s up until 1938. And in the Nuremberg trials after the war, the doctors' trial, which is the second phase, they cite the Americans as inspiration. And that was the big surprise. When I talk about this, that's the moment where people go, this really? You know, this was so central to the American eugenics movement, and they transferred it, like in some cases, word for word, translated into German, and that becomes the sort of central artery in the Holocaust. And after the war, when eugenics becomes this toxic idea, the eugenics labs around the world, including where, the Galton, where I am still at effectively, even though it's not called that now, they turn into human genetics labs because eugenics was originally the study of heredity, but with this political valence to it. Now, and in the late 20th century, they're just labs studying human genetics and heredity and so on. But what emerges from that is reproductive health interventions, understanding of human genetics, the stuff that we've been learning and teaching and talking about for absolutely years. And those, I think, are good things. But their roots are unequivocally in this idea that we find pernicious, which is eugenics.